Hello, everybody. This is Omar Lyles, the mental health coach, and today we are on another episode here on Agape Love Network. And we have a wonderful, wonderful guest. We have worked with each other in the past, and today's topic actually is going to be on how we can be how unhealed trauma can affect relationships. So I would like to give the opportunity for her to actually to introduce herself today. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Omar, for having me on. Like you said, we've worked together, um, doing a lot of topics on mental health in the past and currently. So, thank you for having me today. I'm so elated to be here because it's a topic that, a lot of us, we kind of need, especially in this time and day. As he stated before, my name is Adrienne Terry. I've been on, I am a mental health advocate, and I have a group called the Multicultural Faith-Based Mental Health Network. And basically, that network is comprised of, oh my goodness, spiritual leaders, community leaders, therapists, people with lived experience, you name it. And the purpose of the group is to educate people on the importance of mental health education and mental health awareness in our minority communities, our churches, and our leaders. So I've been in operation since 2017. I've been blessed to been on many lives around the world, and just bringing about the awareness of the importance of mental health in our communities. As a result of COVID, the awareness of mental health has grown drastically, and I am so happy that we, and what I mean by we, people like Omar and myself, have been out here in the trenches even before the COVID epidemic, understanding that there was a need for mental health awareness and the breaking of the stigmas of mental health in our minority communities. So I'm a lot of things. I'm also that's what I do. That's my passion: mental health awareness, mental health advocate. What I do professionally is I work with the homeless. I actually run homeless shelter programs, and I'm currently running alumni seeker programs. So yeah, I'm out in the trenches in New York running programs that are serving the migrants right now, and I extremely love it. It is a very rewarding job. Among many other things that I do, I'm also a preacher evangelist, um, and I love to preach God's word. I am also intimately called by my peers Dr. Terry, although I do not have a doctorate, but they consider me Dr. Terry because I've been out here for a very long time educating, teaching, and educating our community on mental health. So thank you for having me tonight.
Awesome, awesome. You're welcome very much. And so I thank you for just introducing yourself, so people can have an actual understanding of who you are and what you do and things of that particular nature. We've shared the platform with each other in the past. So at this moment, before we actually get into our questions, would you like to introduce this video that we are about to show? Because it's going to be something to where it's going to be actually on the 5 ways unhealed trauma actually affects relationships. So, would you like to introduce it?
Great. Yes. So I wanted to show this little 5-minute video today because a lot of people, when we talk about trauma, a lot of people really do not know what trauma means, right? So I wanted to do just a little cartoon type video just to kind of show people what trauma actually is and how trauma can actually affect you. Of course, we are focusing on relation trauma and relationships today, but I wanted to do a generalized 5-minute video just to show you what trauma is before we get into the meat of the show. Okay, so yes, thank you.
Unhealed trauma can affect our brain and lives in many ways and unfortunately will not die down on its own. So, here are 5 ways unhealed trauma affects us. 1. Potential violent acting out. Have you ever wondered why some people turn to violence and aggression? In our brains, there's an emotional hub called the amygdala. While the amygdala controls the expression of many emotions, it tends to have a very prominent role in fear and aggression. Unhealed trauma tends to intensify these negative emotions in the brain, such as fear, anxiety, agitation, stress, and so on. According to Carolyn Yoder from Peace After Trauma, when trauma goes unhealed, the normal stress reactions from trauma can amplify into acts of violence. Yoder says that this sort of violence can pass through generations, so she suggests trying this cycle and heal as soon as possible. 2. The potential development of PTSD. It's natural to feel afraid during a traumatizing situation, but do you often feel stressed or frightened even when you're not in real danger? Post-traumatic stress disorder is one of the most well-known impacts of trauma. But did you know that PTSD actually results from unhealed trauma? This anxiety disorder can manifest in many ways. Common symptoms of PTSD are nightmares, flashbacks, avoidance of trauma, and emotional numbness. There are many layers and complexities that lie within PTSD, some of which are more recently brought to light. For more in-depth information about this disorder, be sure to check out some of our other videos like the 5 types of PTSD. 3. Potential substance abuse. Self-medication is a common coping mechanism for unhealed trauma. Unhealed trauma makes our stress reactions even more debilitating and can lead to substance abuse. People turn to drugs or alcohol for many different reasons. Commonly cited ones are attempts to displace emotions and avoid the constant impact of trauma. Substance abuse is dangerous and can quickly become an addiction. If you're suffering from substance abuse or unhealed trauma, the effective ways to combat them are cognitive behavioral therapy and treatment programs. 4. Unhealed trauma has more adverse effects on highly sensitive people. Highly sensitive people, also known as HSPs, have the tendency to feel everything more intensely, the good, the bad, and everything in between. When it comes to trauma, this tendency unfortunately still applies. According to Brooke Nielsen from Highly Sensitive Refuge, the characteristics of the highly sensitive brain can be intensified by unhealed trauma. Examples are traits such as emotional reactivity and anxiety. If you are an HSP struggling with the effects of unhealed trauma, please remember to be kind to yourself. There are resources to help you overcome these debilitating emotions, and with healing, self-love, and self-compassion, you'll be okay. And 5, potential physical health impairments. Did you know that trauma affects the body as well as the mind? According to a study done by Harvard Health, many people experience behavioral and physical changes like overeating, more adrenaline production, and even more inflammation due to unhealed trauma. This makes them more susceptible to a number of somatic diseases and disorders, such as cancer, diabetes, obesity, and stroke. In order to avoid these susceptibilities, it's important to try to get the help and heal from the past trauma. The Harvard Health Study suggests a few resources to overcome common healing barriers. These include the International Society for Traumatic Stress Studies, the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, and the National Center for PTSD. The links to those websites are in the description below. Did you relate to any of the things explained in these videos? Did we miss any potential effects of unhealed trauma? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, be sure to like and share this video with those who might benefit from it. The references and studies used in this video are added in the description below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thank you. Can't hear you. We can't hear you. So
Look,
that was a video. Yes, there you go. So that was a video that basically showed basically what trauma is and how trauma can not only affect the body, the mind, but it can also affect the body and behavior. And before you get into your questions, I just want to point out how it's stated in the video that you can have addictive behavior, you can have depression, you can even have health problems, and the health problems stem from the behavior, right, of unhealed trauma. People overeat, people don't eat, uh, and because of trauma, because of the effect of trauma. So yeah, so I just wanted to point that out. And it says something about HSP, emotionally person, supportive person, in the video also. And I would think that that supportive emotional person would be someone who is the recipient of trauma in a relationship, right?
mm,
Someone who has been traumatized because of something that occurred in a relationship. But I don't want to go too deep into it because I know you have questions,
mhm.
and I know at the end you're going to give me time to go into some more things. So
Oh, yes, yes,
let's
yes, definitely. Yeah, very, very interesting video, and how individuals identify with certain traumas within their life. So, but one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, how do you know? You already said, just talked about it a little briefly, but how do you know when you're experiencing trauma within your life? How can a person identify or just know about it?
Right. So first we know that trauma in a relationship can be different things. It can be that you're traumatized because of a domestic violence, right? Or you can be traumatized because of a heartbreak, right? Because someone cheated on you, it's a heartbroken, or you can be traumatized because of the death of someone, right? So anything to do with, but we're going to stick with relationships. I don't want to go too broad, but let's say we're dealing with someone who has a broken heart, right? So you're in a relationship and your heart was broken, and it is trauma. You do have trauma, and some of the signs that you know that you have trauma or you've been traumatized by the relationship is you go through a period of depression. Sometimes people formulate addictive behaviors where someone didn't drink before, now they're picking up a bottle, right? You see this a lot in men. Men go out and they express some of their trauma, or they try to relieve some of their trauma do through drinking or using some type of drugs. Also, you will have trust issues, difficulty trusting people, intimacy problems. Then some people try to actually fix others where they couldn't be fixed. So they'll get into these. They'll start jumping into more toxic relationships, trying to fix that person as a
Mm,
way of trying to relieve them, themselves, and their trauma. Constantly comparing yourself to others, definitely anxiety, difficulty concentrating, no, have boundaries up that's just no one can break through. Um, You can also have fear of even thinking about getting into another relationship, feel unsure about new relationships, and
Mm.
resisting change. And also, as before stated, you can also have chronic pain. You can really have physical pain. There was a study, and I can't recall the study now, but that a broken heart can be life threatening. A broken heart from
Mm.
a relationship, especially in women, believe it or not, can result in heart, some forms of heart disease. And I found that very interesting because when you do have a broken heart, your heart really does experience a physical pain. So you can also have a physical pain. You can also keep blaming yourself, right? What did I was the cause of this breakup? I was the cause of him or her cheating. I was the cause. And lastly, you can isolate yourself. So these are some of the things that you know that you these are some of the things that you can look, especially if you look at someone else, but you can look within yourself and say, I'm exhibiting some of these things. I think I have unhealed trauma. And I know I was traumatized by a relationship, right? So those are the things that you can start looking at to see if you're actually um, suffering from unhealed trauma.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, and so we experience those things, pretty much on a personal level, and some of us has gone through it in some sort of way, um, with ourselves, you know. So I want to ask, because we already talked about, different kinds of things on how you could experience it within your personal life, and so uh, it was about, the signs of unhealed trauma. But one of the questions I want to ask you is what kinds of counseling can actually help us when we have experienced trauma to help with us with our personal life as well? Is there a particular kind of counselor that can actually help us, or how do you go about doing it? What are the next steps that a person can actually take?
Well, first, identifying and understanding that you do have trauma because a lot of us are always in denial, right? There's a lot of people, especially men, they're always in denial. Oh, that girl was nothing. I'm over
Oh
her,
yes.
or they jumped into another
Mhm.
a relationship and they think that they're fine, but they start seeing things or acting in a way uh, in terms of leftover behavior from the last relationship, but we'll get into that. But in terms of healing, so what you're
Mhm.
probably talking about is overall
Yeah.
healing as well. Um, is to first recognize the trauma, recognize your behavior, recognize that you need help, right? And the first thing before you get any type of treatment, the first thing I would recommend to anyone is to stop, drop, and roll. What does that mean? That's a term we use.
Mm.
Stop, drop. I would say sit your butt down. It probably not roll, but sit down. Why? Because don't jump into another relationship when you have unhealed trauma. This is what so many people do. They jump right into another relationship, and because of that, the trauma that they experience just begins to reenact itself over and over again in the new relationship, right? So now you end up exhibiting some of the same behavior and end up getting hurt all over again. And we've heard that
Mm.
with many people when they say, "Why I keep finding the same people? Why do I keep, looking every time I get in a relationship? It's the same type of relationship." Well, I have a theory about that, and we talked about that before the show. One of my theories about why people find the same relationship is because for one, they don't allow themselves to heal, right? You're not
Mm.
allowing yourself to heal and you're jumping in a relationship. But watch this. When you're in the ocean and there's a peep of blood in the water, what happens? If there's a wounded animal in the ocean, don't the sharks come out? The sharks
Mm.
smell the blood. They smell the
Mm.
wounds. They smell the wounds. So
Mhm.
if you're walking around with unhealed wounds, guess what? You're in the ocean. And the predators smell your wounds. Yes, there are people out here, unfortunately, who will take advantage of people who are suffering with some type of trauma. And if you don't allow yourself to heal, the predators smell the wounds. They see the
Mm.
wounds. They see the insecurity. They see the need for love. They see those things. They smell it. And then they come after you, and now you're in another toxic relationship where you're probably going to be not only re-traumatized, but traumatized on another level. Am I talking to somebody out here today? Because there are people out here who can probably say, open their eyes right now and say, I've done that. I've jumped from one relationship that hurt me into another and end up not only being re-traumatized, but traumatized in a whole different way. So it's very important that you get those wounds healed, because you become a wounded animal. You are easy target, right? So that was my theory. So to get to your question, first, take some time, right? Stop, drop, sit down. Take some time to heal. Get into yourself. Find yourself again. So many times we get into relationships and we lose ourselves. Find what helps, what interests you. Find a new hobby. Find something that you can throw yourself into that's positive and that will help you grow as a person. Find that and do that, right? Find your peace. What is your peace? Your peace could
Mm.
be just being in your home by yourself. Your peace could be going out to eat by yourself, or your peace can be just with your family. Find your peace, or your peace, because I'm a woman of God and I am evangelist. Find your peace in Christ, right? But find your peace. So I hope somebody's writing this down. First, sit down. Two, find a hobby. Find something that interests you. Go back to school. Go to the gym. Go do something that makes you feel good about yourself. Three, find your peace. Find your peace. And then allow the process, right? Allow the process of letting go and being hurt. When you're hurt or traumatized, it doesn't heal overnight. And you have to understand that. Go through the process. It is a process. And trust the process. You'll be okay one day. But while you're going through it, trust the process. And the last thing is, yes, counseling. Counseling is important. And Omar, you ask what type of counseling, right? Because there's therapy and there's counseling. And then there's talk. If you have a good friend, talk. Sometimes just talking about how you feel to somebody who you trust can make you
Mhm.
feel better. But if you feel that you are too deep and you cannot get out of that hole of trauma and you really need a deeper level of healing, then I definitely recommend that you see a therapist who has a specialty in healing trauma, in helping a person to understand and heal trauma. Now, watch this. Sometimes trauma is so bad, and as the video stated, that it will have an effect on your brain. Yes, it will. It will change the chemical balance of your brain to the point where you might exhibit anxiety for the first time. And
Mm.
anxiety and depression for the first time. And anxiety and depression is real.
Mhm.
It is real. And trauma can bring on that in a person who never had depression or anxiety or history of it before. Why? Because some traumas, especially domestic violence, can have an effect on the actual chemical breakdown of the brain. Because why is that? Because the brain is trying to protect itself from the hurt. The brain is trying to protect itself, so it will change the chemistry of the brain. And why am I focusing on this? Is because sometimes when you go through a trauma and you do see a therapist, they may, and I would advise it, prescribe a temporary medication to help you get through. And that's where we as Black people stop treatment right there. Because if I'm taking pills, I'm crazy. If I'm taking this, I'm crazy. We have to break the stigma. Sometimes there are a temporary solution to help you get through trauma and depression by taking a small dose of medication if needed, if needed and prescribed by your therapist or your or doctor. But the first thing to get treatment, the first thing to help heal the trauma is to get a therapist who specializes in healing relational traumas. I know that in the past, before pre-COVID, in our communities, we don't look at therapists as a solution. And I know,
Mhm.
Omar, we've been in this for a very long time. And one of the things that I know you and I and other uh, mental health advocates and counselors and professionals, we always say this: there's a doctor for everything. There's a doctor
Mhm.
for even
Yes.
toenails, but nobody want to see the doctor for the brain. Why is that?
Mhm.
They go to the doctor for everything else. They even go to the doctor to get things put on their bodies,
Mhm. Mhm.
but
Yep.
they won't go to but they won't go to the doctor to say, "I'm not feeling all right. I'm not mentally. I'm not feeling all right."
Mhm.
And it's okay not to be okay. If you had your
Mhm.
heart broken, if you've been traumatized in a relationship, it is real, especially if you suffered with a domestic violence situation.
Mhm.
It is real. And sometimes you need real help.
Mhm. Yeah, and you know what? One of the things is that when people have suffered from some sort of trauma in their life, they sort of fall back into this depressive depression kind of lifestyle to where they're no longer like eating, they're not eating right, or they're overeating, they're oversleeping all night. You know, their lifestyle and their patterns begin to change as well. And I've known people who have personally done this, you know, and you'll see the change in their life. You know, they're not clean, they don't take care of themselves physically. You know, their whole image, their whole persona of their lifestyle had actually changed. And sometimes when people see them, they say to themselves, wow, what happened, you know, to their life? Or something has actually triggered them in their life in order for them to be this particular way. So, and that's why I think that it's very, very important, you know, that you're here explaining this to us so that we can get the necessary education that we could actually have, you know, because even though we're people of faith, we need to educate ourselves as believers as well. And there are also non-believers who are in need of this extremely, you know, extremely for them just as much as it is extremely for us. And to go back to previously what you had spoken about before about men, and we're one of the primary ones that did not go to therapy because we are very, very prideful about our character and we're in our place, especially like with our families, you know, and where they stand, because we always have to look at the one that's being the strong one, you know, the one that never backs down, you know, who stands firm on their 2 feet, but inside they're crumbling and they're hurting, and sometimes they might not even be in a marriage or a relationship, and they don't have anybody else to lean on. And so this is why it is important to have a licensed professional counselor, a therapist, or having someone that you could just speak with on a day-to-day basis, you know, to just help you to process those things and just go through those kinds of things in your life. And so that's one of the most important things. So how can also, this is not pretty much of any of the questions that I was going to ask, but how can the church get themselves involved with helping people, you know, with unhealed trauma?
Well, you and I, we've been in the trenches for
We're
a
gonna.
number of years trying to get the churches involved. And I just thank God that a lot of the church leaders have accepted the mental health ministries into their churches. We still have a long way to go, right?
Mhm,
Because the stigmas associated with mental health in our church communities, and what they stand for and what they mean, or what people perceive it as in the church community, what mental health is. But what can the church do? The church can create safe spaces. I think that's kind of what you alluded to earlier when you said that your church was going to do a panel. um, a safe space. And what I mean by a safe space is a night where they have people from different backgrounds, different professional mental health backgrounds, to come into the churches and have a panel, right? And have the members come in, and the members can start asking questions and getting some uh, almost like group therapy right there, right?
mhm,
So that could be something that starts the need. And then
mhm,
what the churches have to do is look within the congregation, because Omar, come on, you and I were sitting in the congregation for years. Nobody recognized mental health back in, you know, a few years ago. So
mhm,
a lot of mental health professionals are sitting in the pews and they're not being utilized. So find the people in your churches who have mental health background. They might not be licensed, but that's okay, because at least they could bring some education, or bring some material or literature, or even give them the assignment to bring in people who may be licensed, or do a needs assessment in your church, right? See if there is a need, right? Because a lot of people are suffering in the pews.
mhm,
And that's what I found over the years, and that's why God called me to
mhm,
this ministry years ago, because of the things that I've seen. I've ran mental health shelters. I've worked with the mentally ill for almost 20 years, and then coming from work and seeing it in the church, you know, and just looking and not being able to be used because that wasn't something that was a priority in ministry.
mhm,
So, now we're seeing it in the church. No, we're not seeing it like it is on the street, like people talking to themselves. But there are people who are depressed and leave home and go to church and leave home from church and go home and contemplate suicide. And I've been at various services where church leaders committed suicide, and
mhm,
because they didn't have that safe space, they didn't have no one to talk to.
mhm,
I remember I went to a safe space at a church held 1 years ago, and I just want to share the story. And the usher that was at the door, she she was just so happy. When ushers greet you at the door, they got that beautiful smile. They show you to their seats and your seat and everything. So as the panel went on, she was able to sit down, and when they start opening up the floor, she asked if she needed help. And what she needed was, the next day was the death of her son anniversary, and that night she wanted to kill herself.
mhm,
She was going to commit suicide that night because
mhm,
it was his anniversary, and she couldn't think of waking up to the pain of another year of her son without her son. And this is an
mhm,
usher. So that night, that safe space, even though she came to church to work, that night saved her life, because the professionals that were on the panel were not only able to give her some professional guidance, but to also get her help, immediate help.
mhm,
So it's important, because and the reason why I say that is because we at church, we look like we holy, we look this,
mhm,
we
yeah,
look that, we come to
the
church, I'm
cover
blessed
up.
and highly favored, and they got
Mhm,
the hat on, the suit, the men
yes,
got the suit with the ties, and praise the Lord and everything.
mhm,
But Jesus, they don't realize Jesus was the greatest counselor.
mhm,
So
amen.
there was a need. There was a
Mhm,
need for counseling.
yeah,
He performed miracles. He performed all
mhm,
that, but he the people that he hung out with, he said that he counseled those people. He counseled the prostitutes.
Mm-hmm.
He counseled the alcoholics. I can see him. They said he went to where they were. He was sitting in bars. I could see him talking to the people. The woman at the well, he counseled her.
I was just about to bring that up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he talked to them, and because he didn't lay hands on her, because he talked to her, she went and felt better about herself. Of course, he
Mm-hmm.
prophesied to her, but but he talked to her, and she was surprised that this man talked to her, right? Because he
Mm-hmm.
was a
Yep.
Jew. So
Mm-hmm.
see how just talking to someone and someone could just be an open and listen helps also. And I
Yeah.
would say this to pastors, I would say to pastors, and I have trained pastors, I have trained spiritual leaders, get some type of training. No, you're not licensed, um, you don't have a degree in mental health, but get some type of training yourself, right? They always have mental health training one-on-one. You can reach out to me, reach out to people like myself and Omar. We have the resources. Get some type of training so that when someone comes in your office and they're exhibiting some type of crisis, yes, pray for them. Yes. But after you pray for them, they might need help, right?
Mm-hmm.
I quote Dr. Phil, what is her name? My online, I can't believe it. I quote her. You've seen her in my group. You've seen her. When I say
Dr.
this, you're gonna,
Kimmer.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, I
She
love her.
says, she says, in this war, I love this quote. In this war of mental health, right? When every time you go to war, you need a strategy and a strategist, a plan,
Mm.
weapons, and a strategy. That's
Mm.
what she said. She said, prayer is the weapon. Prayer is the weapon, but mental health counseling is the strategy.
Mm.
Therapy is the strategy. And you got the
I
strategy
need to
and the
write that
weapon. And
down.
that's how you win the war against mental health in church. You got the
Mm.
weapon, which is prayer, and a strategy. And baby, we are your strategists.
Mm. I like that. I like that. I
So,
love Dr. Tim O'Brien. And the thing about it also is that when I brought about men, and this is just could be in general, is that a lot of times people feel a sense of embarrassment, but especially like when it comes down to group sessions. But I think that if that person was in a private session with a licensed counselor, that's when they can speak to them privately about that. But a lot of times when it comes down to seeing someone who's a mental health coach, therapist, or whatever that's out there, it's a sense of embarrassment to even just to speak about, because no one wants to be exposed about their own issues. And this is where the sense of pride actually comes in, because even when I had my own issues, my own personal issues, and I didn't want to tell anybody, because sometimes people have a way of, a trust gets also involved when you're speaking to someone as well, because you're looking around, who can I trust, to speak to, that's not going to air what I have that's in me to somebody else. Because sometimes people have a distrust into speaking with somebody. I spoke to a minister one time and they told my business. You know, I spoke to a pastor one time and they told my business. I've seen people preach other people's business
oh,
from the pulpit.
yes, yes.
And the sense of embarrassment. Now, this is not to say that everybody has gone through this, but it has happened in some shape, form, or fashion. And that's why I believe that prayer is the weapon, is as you were saying, and that counseling is actually the strategy. We need the strategy. We need to fight against these demons that's coming against our lives, that's not able, that's trying to get us to not be able to work and do the will of God, or even just do the will of God in our personal life. you know and so this is why I believe that this is so important, in our lives,
Can I
because
can I say one thing?
yes.
First of
Yes.
all, That's why we're recommending, like, you're right. Who do you talk to, especially men? I'm so happy that men like yourself and other men are stepping up and letting the other men know that it's okay, right? It's okay not to be okay. And who can
Yeah.
they trust? And I'm glad that men are starting to see that they need help, right? Because in our with men, some of the ways they exhibit heartbreak in relationship is, getting another woman, right, and thinking they're better, or substance abuse, or acting out in some kind of way. But in order to feel comfortable talking to someone, it's important. This is why it's important to talk to someone who's licensed. Why? Because they are licensed to keep confidentiality under the HIPAA law, right? So they cannot disclose any of your information unless, we call it break the window, unless you it's a life
Mm-hmm.
and death situation, right? They cannot disclose. They cannot disclose your information unless you give them rented, sign consent, written signed consent to disclose your information, or like I said, in terms of a situation of break the window where it's a life and death. So that's why it's important to just, invest, look at your insurance, your job insurance, or what other kind of medical insurance you have, and see, do they pay for therapy? See if you can find therapists that go by scale pay, where they go by, how much you can pay, or they have plans or things like that, or even free counseling. You can go on New York City Well, and they have counselors 24 hours a day. Those who people in crisis. I'll give that information towards the end. But it's if you're going to talk to someone and you want to really, and you scared that your business is going to be repeated, because I've seen it. Omar, I've seen it. I've seen it in church where you tell your business and you tell it to a spiritual
Mm-hmm.
leader, and everybody knows your business, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why it's important to talk to somebody who holds a license, and,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm pushing
Where they can
people
be held
towards.
accountable.
Exactly, through the HIPAA law, they cannot disclose any of your information,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so happy to see that there are a lot of spiritual leaders now who are licensed. So that's good. You can find licensed Christian, if that's what you want, therapists, or if you're not Christian, they have all type of therapy. But I tell you this, watch this. Finding a therapist is almost like finding a pair of shoes that fit good. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
not every therapist is a fit for you. So you may go to one therapist, you may make an appointment, you'll talk for an hour, and you just don't feel it, right? You just, something about this person. Find another one. Make an
Mm-hmm.
appointment and go to another one until you get it right. Don't give up. What happened to our people is, oh, I went to a therapist, I didn't like it, so that was it. It's not that you didn't like it, you didn't probably feel that vibe with that particular therapist, right? So find somebody that's close to something of what you're looking about for. In psychology today, they have a listing of all the therapists. You can even put your zip code in psychologists, and you can read their bios. You can read what they're all about, and
Mm-hmm.
you can make appointments. Do your research. Just don't go to any therapist.
Yeah.
Try to find somebody that fits close to you. But I say this to the men out there, and I hope our men are listening tonight. Men, it's okay not to be okay. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to be hurt. God created you with emotions, right? He created you with feelings. When men get hurt, they try to be the strong, macho, prideful thing. But guess what? The Bible says pride comes before destruction, right? So when you have that pride, you're really destroying your own self, because you're not releasing that. You're holding on to that. And believe it or not, when you hold on to things like those pride and grudges and all that, it really does have an effect on your body. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of high blood pressure and a lot of physical ailments are a result of unhealed trauma in the body, unhealed anger, unhealed forgiveness, unhealed pride, unhealed resentment. It's like poison in your system.
Mhm.
and it manifests itself in your body, high blood pressure, strokes, things like that. And you don't want to get sick. You want to release these things. You
Mhm.
want to release them. And how do you release them? You release them through talking. You release it through understanding that there is an issue and talking about it.
Mhm. Amen. Amen. So we're going to be winding down pretty soon. So we're now actually at the end, close to the end. So actually, before we go, I was going to say 3 minutes, but I'm just going to give you just 1 minute. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
'cause I don't know how long you want to talk, but I'll just probably say 1 minute. Just to just for this, just to give us a 3 minute lecture on how we can actually manage unresolved trauma.
Okay, I'm going to do this fast. Okay, first of all, identify that you do have trauma, right? Your heart is broken, you're depressed, you're leaning towards addictive behavior, you're isolating yourself. So once you identify that you have trauma, right, from a relationship, remember, we're talking about trauma from a breakup, a relationship, or a loss, right? And then once you identify it, don't jump into another relationship. Sit down, get into yourself, find something to revert your time and your thinking. Find a hobby, find something that makes you feel good and do it. Take your time. Don't jump into another relationship. Also, I would recommend, we didn't talk about that, getting a physical. Go to the doctor and get a physical. Get a whole body physical, right? Because trauma does have an effect on the body, right? Trauma does affect your body, sometimes in the form of high blood pressure and any other ailment. So you need to do that. That's starting the process of healing from the trauma. Also, talk to somebody that you trust. If you don't have someone you trust, then maybe look to see if you can get a counselor, somebody with a license. If you're scared of hearing your issues someplace, or you're scared of somebody talking about your issues to somebody else, get a therapist. Get someone who's licensed, who's under the HIPAA law, so that you know that that person will not reveal the things that you said in privacy to them. So just understand that healing from trauma is extremely important. And guess what? There is no time limit. We all heal differently. But it's important that you start the process of healing and begin to understand that before you get into another relationship, before you get yourself into another situation, you have to sit that back, stop, sit down, and heal.
All right, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I appreciate what has been said and the importance of it, and pretty much in how we have to stop and be healed. So at this particular moment, well, let's just say I'm thankful for having you on here today. It has
Thank you for having
been
me.
quite pleasure, and definitely going to have you back on again. To me, this was phenomenal. I've been waiting to actually discuss this particular type of subject because people break up. They've been in relationships, or they've been married. They've been divorced. They've gone through situations in their personal life where they're actually trying to get themselves back together again. But before I go, I just want everybody to know, because I did put a disclaimer that this is not a substitute, okay, for counseling. But I would rather see them go and see a licensed professional counselor. So I just want to say that I have people that I have to report to as well. So we both are accountable, because when people are certified and licensed, they have to let people know. So right now, I would like you to just let everybody know your handles, where they can find you on social media, and how they can actually get in contact with you. Just let them know about that.
Okay, well, my email address is my name, Adrienne Terry, 1999 at gmail.com. You can email me. I'm also on Facebook under Adrienne Terry. And my group is called the Multicultural Faith Based network, mental health network. It's a group that if you really want to know more about mental health, if you really want to be educated on it, definitely join the group. It's a very interactive educational group on mental health.
Mhm. Awesome, awesome. So at this particular moment, again, I just want to thank you for just having you on here tonight. It has been a quiet pleasure, and so just stick around just for like a minute or two, and we're gonna get ready to say good night, everybody. And I thank each and every single one of you for just taking the time to just listen to this conversation on how unhealed trauma can affect relationships. And so until next time, with me here on Omar Lyles, the mental health coach, founder and CEO of Agape Love Network.
Right.